As an author, men are always asking me for book recommendations. Right now, I'm doing research for a book on virtue, and that led me to The Righteous Mind by social psychologist Johnathan Haidt. Now, I hate that this book looks and sometimes reads like it was written for NPR listeners who are wondering, why can't conservatives and liberals just get along? But if you look past that, Haidt presents some really solid, in-depth research about how humans make moral decisions. In my book, The Way of Men, I made a distinction between being good at being a man and being a good man, so that we can better understand masculinity. And that's because there are aspects of the way that we judge each other as men that have nothing to do with morality. But if you are also interested in what it means to be a good man, and I think that you should be, then you have to return to questions of ethics and morality. And I think that if we're going to talk about moral virtue intelligently, we need to understand how humans actually do form moral judgments, not just how people think that they should. And that is what Haidt's research addresses. So let's get into some of the key ideas in The Righteous Mind. The elephant and the rider. The first big idea that Haidt unpacks is that most of our moralizing as humans is emotional and based on intuition. We often make moral decisions about whether something is right or wrong in seconds, or even fractions of a second. We get a gut feeling about a situation right away. Haidt calls that moral intuition, that gut feeling, the elephant, because elephants are big and they're going to do what they want to do. Then humans use reason, which he calls the rider, to support that gut feeling so that we can justify the things that we say or do or the decisions we make to other people. Because people are much smaller than elephants and it's just easier to go along for the ride. Now, humans can reason their way to new beliefs and positions, and sometimes they do. And humans can also convince an elephant to change directions. People train elephants all the time, but that is not the default. Haidt believes that much of our capacity for moral reasoning evolved to influence members of our groups to think well of us and to manage our reputations. Think about it. If you're in a small group of humans struggling to survive, and I've made this point in my work countless times myself, if the other members of the group see you as a bad person, that actually matters a lot. Because if they kick you out of the group or they turn on you, you're probably not going to make it. We are hardwired to care about our reputations. This idea that we don't actually reason our way to most moral decisions will be really challenging to men who like to think of themselves as being very rational. And they probably are, some of the time. But probably not most of the time. Which includes, as Haidt points out, some of my favorite ancient philosophers like Plato or Aristotle, who seem to place reason above all other things. Here is a provocative quote from The Righteous Mind. Anyone who values truth should stop worshiping reason. We all need to take a cold, hard look at the evidence and see reasoning for what it is. The French cognitive scientists Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber recently reviewed the vast research literature on motivated reasoning in social psychology and on the biases and errors of reasoning in cognitive psychology. They concluded that most of the bizarre and depressing research findings make perfect sense once you see reasoning as having evolved not to help us find truth, but to help us engage in arguments, persuasion, and manipulation in the context of discussions with other people. People often decide that they believe a thing, and then come up with reasons to convince others why they are right to believe it, even when those reasons usually have nothing to do with why they started believing it in the first place. Haidt says that our minds are basically press secretaries. It is their job to defend the president no matter what he says or does. Haidt isn't saying that we should abandon reason. He's obviously using it to make an argument. But reason requires a lot of self-awareness, and it takes a lot longer to reason your way out of your gut reaction than it does to just go with it. Harm and fairness. Haidt also argues that high systematizers, people who need a system for everything, and especially high systematizers with poor social abilities, have created moral systems that attempted to reduce all of human morality to one or two basic principles. For Jeremy Bentham, it was increasing pleasure and reducing harm. Immanuel Kant basically said that you shouldn't do a thing unless you'd want everyone else to do it and make it a universal law, just to keep things fair. These ideas have been very influential, and a lot of people still attempt to reason that way. You've heard people say that, well, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, then it must be okay. But according to Haidt, the data shows that human moral intuition across all populations is actually more complex and has more features than just concerns about someone getting hurt or what is universally fair. Philosopher David Hume said that moral reasoning is a bit more like a selection of tastes, like all the tastes necessary to make a balanced and pleasing food or meal. Haidt said that this research led him to conclude that human moral reasoning functioned closer to the model of a balance of tastes than to one principle. So, using that model, he and other researchers developed their theory of moral foundations. Moral foundations theory. Moral foundations theory starts from Hume's old observation that morality is more like taste than like pure reason. We come into the world with a small set of innate moral taste receptors, what Haidt calls the first draft of the moral mind, organized in advance of experience. These receptors make certain concerns register immediately as good or bad. Cultures then build full moral systems on top of them, the way that different cuisines develop around the same basic tastes. The righteous mind proposes 5 moral foundations, which Haidt and others believe to be innate moral intuitions in humans. However, in 2023, Haidt and his colleagues updated their list of foundations to include 6 moral foundations. Rather than present the old list from the book here, I'm going to give you the most updated version. The moral foundations. Care. Intuitions about avoiding emotional and physical damage to another individual, such as kindness, nurturing, preventing suffering. Equality. Intuitions about equal treatment and equal outcomes for individuals. Proportionality. Intuitions about individuals getting rewarded in proportion to their merit or contribution. Loyalty. Intuitions about cooperating within groups and competing without groups. Examples include patriotism or sacrifice for the group. Authority. Intuitions about deference toward legitimate authorities and the defense of traditions. Purity. Intuitions about avoiding bodily and spiritual contamination and degradation. Examples like body as a temple, self-discipline, naturalness, and spirituality. You can find these foundations on their website at moralfoundations.org, along with a ton of related personality tests, studies, and academic papers concerning moral foundations theory. The moral foundations are not neutral or equally distributed, and they overlap with what we know about cross-cultural differences between men and women. Haidt doesn't get into that too much in the book himself, but we could add, for instance, that men, on average, respond more strongly to authority, to proportionality as earned merit, and to loyalty to coalitions when there is a threat. And that is why male social life has always been organized around dominance hierarchies, status competition, physical risk, and the defense of group boundaries. One might call them perimeters. Modern attempts to flatten those patterns into pure culture or pure choice run into the same data that Haidt's model predicts. The first draft keeps reasserting itself when the model being promoted strays too far from the original setup. And the original setup is what we call human nature. There is only so much that you can program out of us, and believing that you could use social programs to completely change human nature was the fatal hubris of the boomer generation and their blank slate ideologies. I believe that the 6 moral foundations, combined with what we know about other human cultural universals, sex differences, and the wisdom of ancient cultures, religions, and philosophy, can help us synthesize a workable base model of virtue for men. Now, as I said earlier, I wasn't particularly interested in the political framing of this book. I came across this book because I wanted to see who had developed more ideas about human universals, specifically the ones listed by Donald E. Brown in this book. You can read a list of his human universals, unfortunately without much explanation, on a link that is still active and which I will include in the description right below this video. The righteous mind deepened my understanding of human moral reasoning. It didn't challenge me politically because, like Haidt, I was a liberal until I was in my 30s, and I actually did change the elephant's direction. I already knew what liberals thought, so it didn't impart any sympathy or understanding there. However, the book did challenge me in other ways and prompted me to examine how I was handling problems and making decisions in other aspects of my life. The Righteous Mind is very much worth reading, and I do recommend it. I posted a longer, more in-depth version of this review to my Substack. I'll put the link in the comments and the description. Subscribe to me there if you want to read what I'm writing and thinking before it makes it to YouTube. And if you thought that this video was valuable and are interested in more accessible philosophy for men, please give me a like and a subscribe here. I'm Jack Donovan. Stay solar.